So my paper is titled Imposters Have Goals Too, the Imposter Phenomenon and its Relationship to Achievement Goal Theory. And it was published in 2006 by Kumar and Jagosinski. And I thought I would use this PowerPoint format, so maybe it would be a little bit easier for you guys to follow along with the different sections of the paper and just overall lead to a better understanding for you guys. So the first part of the paper um, is the introduction, and it talked about imposter phenomenon and prior research relating to it. So, imposter phenomenon is when people doubt their achievements are results of ability and instead attribute their successes to non ability factors. So, it's like a general feeling of phoniness in regards to their achievements and thinking they kind of don't deserve them or they come from non ability or outside factors like hard work, luck, or knowing the right people. Um, and imposters do care about their relative standing and kind of where they stand amongst their peers, but they're uncertain about their own ability. And this can lead to negative effects on well being, as prior research has shown. So, prior research has shown that imposters have lower performance expectations, lower self perception of ability, and this lower perception ability and this fear prevents imposters from aiming high. And can be a huge problem because if imposters don't aim high, they won't achieve up to their maximum potential. It's also been shown that imposters have more anxiety and they score higher on neuroticism. And it's also been shown that imposters have more negative reactions to failures. So even if they encounter a small failure, they may overgeneralize this one small failure to their overall global self concept, which can definitely be an issue. It's also been shown that there's a negative relationship between imposter scores and self esteem. So, the higher somebody scores on the imposter rating, the lower their self esteem actually is. And in terms of gender, at the point of this publication, it was a little bit ambiguous on the gender effects of imposter phenomenon. And well, imposter phenomenon was first initially found in women, and that's where the primary research came from. But research after that showed that imposter phenomenon can definitely happen in men, and that it's a little bit ambiguous whether it's more strong or more prominent in women or more prominent in men, or if it's about the same in both. And a 1988 paper by Clance and O'Toole strongly believes that women are more adversely affected by imposter phenomenon. And so gender is a huge part of this paper, which I'll get into more as that comes up. But this leads me to my first discussion question, which is that have you ever felt imposter fears at any point in your life, whether it be in an academic setting or another part of your life, like athletics, clubs, or extracurriculars, or things like that? And for me, the first thing that comes into mind is I was an engineering major in Watson my freshman year, and my first semester, I definitely felt like an imposter, especially in the math and the physics classes, because I just felt like everyone there was so much smarter than me and so much had so much more ability than me in those subjects, and I definitely felt like an imposter that first semester um, of college as an engineer. Um, so now moving on to the second aspect of this paper, which is achievement goal theory, and we've kind of discussed this a good amount in this course previously through different readings and lectures, but I definitely wanted to review it a little bit. So there's different goals that people can adopt in achievement situations. And sometimes people choose a goal where they try to demonstrate their competence in a task. And other times people can choose a goal where they try to avoid demonstrating incompetence for a task to like kind of preserve their self-concept and self-worth. And the goal a person adopts depends on how a person defines competence. So some people define competence from more of a self-referential standpoint, where they kind of are competing with themselves and want to improve upon what they were before and keep improving till they kind of reach a mastery point. And other people define competence through normative standards, which is comparing yourself amongst others and wanting to outperform others, and that will make one feel competent. So task goals or task involving goals relate more to the self-referential definition of competence, where people think that they can work hard and improve and finally get to a mastery level for that task. And performance goals or ability approach goals are kind of the opposite, where the person is more preoccupied with the outcome and cares more about their ability um, compared to others in that task rather than comparing themselves to themselves, like task involving was. And the goal that's adopted, like we talked about, um, depends on which theory of intelligence a person believes. So, entity theory is the idea that intelligence is fixed, and incremental theory is the idea that intelligence can be improved and worked upon with hard work. So, entity theorists are much more likely to have performance goals or ability approach goals, whereas incremental theorists are much more likely to adopt a task goal mindset where they believe they can keep working harder to improve to a mastery point. Um, and so the introduction actually talks about a third type of achievement goal called ability avoid goals. And this predominantly focuses on a fear of failure. So people who adopt ability avoid goals try to avoid demonstrating incompetence. So they avoid the task for fear that if they do the task, they will be seen as incompetent in it. So they just kind of avoid it because of the fear of failure. And this leads me to my second discussion question, which is, have you ever personally adopted an ability avoid goal in your life, whether it be academic or something else? If you did, have you found a successful way to overcome this mindset, or do you still have it in this in the subject today? And the first thing that comes to mind for me for ability avoid goals is one of my friends from high school. We played baseball all through Little League together, but when it came time to try out for the middle school modified team, he just wasn't confident in his abilities and kind of was afraid of failure. So he didn't try out for the team. So he kind of avoided the task at hand because he was afraid of failure. Because he said that like if he didn't try out, there's no way he could get cut from the team because he never even put himself in a situation to experience the failure. So that's just an example that came to mind for me. So the rationale behind this study takes both imposter phenomenon and achievement goal theory and kind of puts them together because there's definitely overlap between imposter phenomenon and especially the ability to avoid goals of achievement goal theory. So just to refresh, imposter phenomenon, um, imposters believe that they have deceived others into believing that they are something they're not, and they think that their true ability will be discovered by others. And once again, ability avoid goals is when someone abandons trying to show competence because of prior failures. So now they focus on avoiding um, being incompetent. And prior research has shown overlap between imposters and ability avoid goal orientation. So imposters seem more likely to be entity theorists, which makes sense, and adopt ability avoid goals because they're concerned about their own ability. Both are anxious at the possibility of failure, and both overgeneralize single failure to their global self concept, which I talked about previously for imposters. So, this leads to the hypothesis and the purpose of the study. The purpose was to explore whether the achievement goals associated with imposter fears differ for men and women, because, like I said earlier, gender is a huge part of the study. And the hypothesis is that if women imposters endorse entity theory and ability based goals more than male imposters, they will be more vulnerable to maladaptive behaviors. So now moving on to the method. The participants were taken from an introductory psychology class and made up of students and they were participating in the study as part of a course requirement. And that leads me to my next discussion question, which is do you think it is an issue when psychology researchers use participants who are only participating because it's an undergraduate course requirement? And do you think there's a better way to conduct this research? And the reason I ask this question is I remember when I was a freshman taking Psych 111 um, and had to do the course requirement research. There'd be times where it would be a survey type research like this one, and I would kind of get tired and fatigued and start bubbling in like random answers or all bubbling in the same type of answer for everything because I didn't really want to take the effort into taking it seriously. So I think that was just fun to pose a question to see what you guys think about whether it's an issue doing research when it's part of a course requirement. And so there was 135 participants with a median age of 19, and 69% were male and 86% were white. So they're overwhelmingly male and overwhelmingly white. And this actually leads me to my next discussion question, which is so this research was done on introductory psychology students, and the median age was 19. So it's fair to assume that they were either freshmen or maybe sophomores, but definitely in the first half of their college career. And my question was that do you think that imposter fears may change by the time the students are seniors? So like, is there a chance that imposter fears decrease as students become more settled into the college environment? Because I feel like personally that happened to me because I definitely felt more like an imposter my first semester here than now as a senior, where I'm definitely more comfortable in the college environment. So now moving on to the procedure. So the participants completed questionnaire packets in groups of 15 or fewer in sessions lasting less than 30 minutes. And some of the questionnaires was the Clance Imposter Phenomenon Scale, which measured imposterism. Another one was Patterns of Adapted Learning Scales to measure achievement goals, which was a 5-point Likert scale questionnaire. They're also given a 3-item measure of confidence in their intelligence, and also a questionnaire asking them about their theory of intelligence. They're also given a test anxiety scale and then a demographic questionnaire with a self-reported GPA for controlling for ability. And it was noted in the paper that all of these questionnaires and scales given did have a very high reliability and validity in terms of what they were looking for. And this actually brings me to my next question. I know I have a lot of questions for the method section, but my last question here is do you think that self-reported GPA is a good metric for controlling for ability? In other words, do you think GPA is a good indicator of ability? And the reason I ask this is, um, well, one, these students are pretty young. They're 19 median age, which means they can't have much of a track record in terms of college GPA. And as we all know, the first semester of college tends to be tends to not go as well as the rest of your college in terms of academics. Another reason I ask this is from an anecdotal perspective. I definitely know people who I consider and many people would consider very high ability, but don't have as high of a GPA as their ability says due to other factors like disinterest or disinterest. They're not really caring about academics, but they're definitely of high ability. So that's why I wanted to ask you guys that question. So now moving on to the results. So as I said, gender was a huge part of the study, and they found that, as expected, they found that women reported greater imposter fears than men. They also found that women were higher in ability to avoid goals than men, and they also found that women reported lower confidence in intelligence and greater test anxiety than men. And I just have a screenshot of that table here, so if you guys want to pause and actually look at the different numbers, but those were the significant results. And this is not yet looking at anything else, any correlations. This is just straight up that women scored higher or lower, significantly higher or lower in these different categories when compared to men. So now I'm going to talk about the results as it pertained to correlations. And they basically tested correlations for all of the different factors that they tested for in their questionnaires to find, to look for any types of significant correlations or associations. So one of the first ones they found was that imposter fears and ability to avoid goals are positively related to test anxiety. And they also found that imposter fears and ability to avoid goals are negatively related to confidence and intelligence. And this was the case for both men and women. And they actually did these correlations separate for men and women because of the previous slide. It showed that there was very significant differences between men and women and how they answered the survey questions. So in order to be consistent, they actually separated out the men and women when running these correlations. But they did find for both men and women that those still held true, even for both of them, even though they scored differently. And those results are consistent with the idea that imposter fears and ability to avoid goals are fueled by an underlying fear of failure. So that's what those results are. That's where the major findings of those results are. And for women, they found that theories of intelligence were pretty significant for women. So imposterism for women was significantly correlated with entity theory. So as I mentioned earlier, entity theory is the idea that intelligence is fixed, and they found that for women, that was very highly correlated with showing signs of imposterism. And that was not the case for men, which is a pretty interesting finding.